Hi, everybody. Today's session is with Colin Christie. Hi, Colin. How are you doing?
Very good, Graeme. Nice to see you. How are you today?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. This has been a fun week of catching up with a variety of different business people and learning about them and their lessons, their developments, and maybe some top tips as well. So do you want to just start off by telling everybody about what you've done and what kind of part of the business world you work in?
No problem. So when we met, Graeme, I was the head of people services at Northumbria Police. And that was kind of the culmination of a fairly eclectic background in HR, I would suggest. I've been all across the Middle East. I've been across the UK, London, Edinburgh, Newcastle. And I came back to the UK 3 years ago to join the police, where I initially was installed in the learning and development department to try and improve our approaches to learning, the police's approach to leadership, the approaches to customer experience, which we'll probably talk about later, which is a bit of a weird term in policing, and that's about it.
Wow, brilliant. We'll talk about the program that we ran with the police a little bit later on, but having worked and lived abroad for 10 years myself, I'm always intrigued with where people lived and where you worked. And one of my minor degrees, which I did in the States, was in cultural anthropology. So I have this huge love of travel and different cultures and people as well. So whereabouts have you lived, Colin?
So I've lived in, well, let's go and start at the beginning. I've lived in Scotland, I've lived in England, I've lived in Saudi Arabia, I've lived in Qatar, I've lived in Dubai. Okay. I've operated in Germany, in France, in Ireland, in Spain, in Holland. Oh. My wife is Dutch, and my kids are bilingual. I'm
brilliant, not. Brilliant. And I love the fact that you started with Scotland and England first in that whole list.
You got to get Scotland in. My parents are Scottish, so I'm genetically Scottish, even though I'm quite obviously English.
Wow, brilliant. And I suppose living in the Northeast, we're pretty close to Scotland anyway, so it amalgamates a little bit, although I'm sure some of the Scottish people have said, Graeme, you're definitely English, so just stay down there a little bit.
Well, it still amazes me. It never ceases to amaze me how few English people have been to Scotland. The Scots would probably keep it that way, but it is a beautiful country and people should visit it more.
It is. I love it. And I spent a lot of time there as a junior tennis player, because living in the Northeast, where we were limited in terms of what tournaments that you could play. So I used to travel up to Edinburgh and Morton Hall and Craig Lockhart quite regularly to play tournaments up there, and still have quite a few friends who are working in the world of tennis, but in Scotland as well. And obviously they've produced Jamie and Andy over the last decade, which has been phenomenal for Scotland, but also phenomenal for the UK generally, I think, too.
So as you know, my tennis is not the same standard as yours. I entered one tennis tournament in my life. That was in Riyadh, and I got knocked out in the first round.
Yeah, but Riyadh, not bad place to enter a tennis tournament, is it? Yeah, it's not bad. So tell me about the Middle East then. What did you like about the Middle East, and which was your favorite place?
So my favorite place, probably surprisingly, was Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia was so different culturally. And coming to your social anthropology point, they have a very, very different operating model to what you're used to, and that makes it very interesting. So you have separation in queues for men and women. You have prayer times where you can get locked into supermarkets while prayer continues. You have security where you live. So we had a tank outside our compound, and our car would be searched every day. And the thing people don't realize about Saudi, I think, is that most Saudis are dirt poor. 24, well, when I was living there, was about population 25 million, of which 24 million were below what we would consider the poverty line. Now, as a result of that, they're very interested and interesting in terms of the outside world. So you come from Newcastle, Scotland, England, they want to know about that. They want to talk to you about Cristiano Ronaldo. They want to find out who you support. They want to find out about Newcastle United and the really, really lovely people. Society was fascinating for all sorts of reasons, and I really enjoyed it. I worked in Dubai and Saudi. I worked in telco. With a little stint in between in Qatar. Dubai is the easiest place to live. Dubai, very glamorous. What they've done there is incredible. They have built a very modern, very flashy, very trendy city in the space of 20 years. And everything just works there. So that's the easiest place to live, but it's perversely in a way less interesting. The cultural differences are less. It's kind of Russia, Britain, America on steroids. So you don't get that shock of the Middle East that you get in Saudi, or that you would also get in Jordan or Egypt or Syria, as was before that all sort of kicked off. So yeah, Saudi was the best place in terms of experience.
Okay, it's interesting you mentioned Saudi and Newcastle United almost in the same sentence there, especially with the current takeover. But I'm sure everybody in Saudi Arabia also looks out and wants to find out about Sunderland Football Club as well, and potentially every other Northeast football club.
I did. I am a ridiculous human being. I have written to Amanda Staveley asking us to give me a job, but I haven't heard anything back yet.
Well, if Kevin Keegan's coming back, I'm sure there's a possibility of a return. Although she might send you back to Saudi.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting what you talked about social and cultural anthropology there, and it just reminded me when you mentioned the tank about when I used to live and work in Egypt, and I took a little trip to Cairo where I was staying and living in a place called El Qassia. I was working for Mervyn Pick, who are a Swiss hotel company, and we decided to take the bus to Cairo. I loved the whole people concept, and instead of flying or taking the Mervyn Pick taxi, I thought, let's just get on the bus with all of the locals. And the poverty is quite poor over there in parts of Egypt as well. So here's two white people getting on a bus full of Egyptians, and it was a bit like that Carry On movie where you had people almost on the roof and there were no windows and everything. And it was a brilliant experience. And everybody wanted to talk to me about where I was from and what I was doing and why was I in Egypt. And I loved that. But on the way home, we were coming back. And I think it was the original George Bush who had just bombed Iraq. And what had happened was all of the Egyptian armed forces were moving south. So we got stopped and pulled over. And nobody knew where we were. So apart from the general manager who knew I was on the X bus in Cairo traveling back down. So nobody else in the world knew where we were. And the armed forces were there and they kind of stopped the bus. And I was thinking, oh dear, we're in trouble now. But they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I've always thought that if you treat people as people, then actually you get the same kind of respect back sometimes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The Egyptians are wonderful, aren't they? The Mervyn Picks brought back memories. We went on a wonderful holiday to Jordan and stayed in the Mervyn Pick on the Dead Sea. Yeah, one of the best hotels I've ever stayed in. It's extraordinary, beautiful place. And the Egyptians, Cairo, the old Cairo airport was absolutely crazy. Yeah. How anybody got their bags to where they were supposed to be going is still a mystery to me.
Well, I still can't get in my head. When you're in Cairo and you go to see the pyramids at Giza, you literally almost go up the top of the bank and you can see the pyramids, but then you can also see McDonald's. And I can never get that out of my head. And shamefully, I probably nipped into that McDonald's as well because I'd been there a while and needed a little bit of Big Macs.
The Egyptians are fun. I mean, I'm stereotyping massively here, but the Egyptians have got a real sense of humour. Yeah. So that everything is said with a twinkle in their eye. As part of the sort of that Arabic surrounding area, they're the ones that take themselves least seriously, I would suggest.
And my one word, which it sticks in my head all the time in terms of my learning, because it's been a while since I spoke. Well, it's been a while since I was in Egypt, but mish mumkin was the word which I picked up, which means not possible. But if you say it with a real strong Egyptian, mish mumkin, it's a very aggressive, not possible. It's not like, oh, thanks. It's and that was one of the words that stuck in my head. I love that.
Very cool.
Yeah. Fab. So you came back home after how many years abroad, Colin?
10 years abroad. Came back home. I was offered a couple of jobs down in London. And I was making my mind up which job to take before flying back to Dubai, pick up the family and take them back to the UK. And on my way, more or less, to the airport, I popped into Marks and Spencer's where I met a woman who was carrying far too many bags and buying far too many sandwiches. So I offered to carry her bags back to her car. She turned out to be Area Commander Sharon Scott of the Northumbria Constabulary. And one thing led to another, and I, within 24 hours, got offered a job at Northumbria Police.
Wow.
So that's how I ended up in the police. A fortuitous meeting of people in the Marks and Spencers in Kingston Park, just outside Newcastle.
That's a fab story. And I guess that maybe the moral of the story there is if you're nice to somebody, again, you might get something back to you.
Yeah, and it was convenient for me because my parents still live in Newcastle, so it gave me a chance to get the kids back to a place that we were all familiar with.
Yeah, although I wouldn't recommend trying to carry anybody's bags at this moment in time, especially out of the supermarket. The police might be coming to see you for completely different reasons.
Correct. Stay safe, everybody.
Absolutely. So we met in terms of GFIS National Solutions. My business came in and ran an emotional intelligence program, which we ran probably somewhere about 8 to 9 months, didn't we? About 76 officers, I think, in total.
Yeah, it was quite a big impact for us. So we had a chat. You reached out to me, and we sat down and discussed. And I always felt that the comms department in the police force was always kind of the poor cousins, if you like. So these are the guys that answer the 999 calls, answer the 111 calls. They work tremendously hard in a fairly grim environment. There's no windows, it's quite dark. The technology is relatively old. The screens and the tools they're using are fairly difficult. Now, surprisingly, we don't have a massive attrition rate there because we're a reasonable employer, we pay relatively well, etc. However, we also don't have a massive, or didn't have a massive engagement level there either. It's a fairly treadmill-y type role. You're in every day, you're hearing some fairly miserable things. And when you came along with your proposition, I thought it was a real opportunity to try and understand the environment they're working in, also give them something back and give them some tools to help them cope with some of the difficulties that they would face on a day-to-day job. So it was really fortuitous timing.
Yeah, good. I enjoyed working on the program and also with all of the officers there as well. And it was fun because we were able to do some one-to-ones. And I don't know whether you can remember this, but the first conversation we had was, I'm not going to do any seminars, because whilst we do seminars, and we still did some seminars, I sometimes don't get the value in just a seminar by itself. So we did one-to-ones with all of the staff, which was very timely to do, but we did a one-to-one at the beginning, and we ran some assessments. We ran some psychometric assessments, emotional intelligence assessments, and we used heart math in terms of looking at them from a physiological point of view as well as a psychological point of view. We had what I called I went all American, Colin, and went mid-season break, where we had another one-to-one with them then, and then we had a one-to-one at the end of program 2. And the change was amazing, and the feedback in terms of what we got from it was incredible at the time.
Well, I don't think you can underestimate the power of that one-to-one intervention. These are people who had been trained on the tools, trained on the systems, trained how to answer the phones when they joined. And that was probably the last training they had. For someone to speak to them on a one-to-one basis for half an hour, and take them seriously and listen to them, in itself, you could have said anything probably, but in itself, taking the time out to do that is always going to have a positive impact on people, and it clearly did.
Fab. And obviously with that program, we've got all the detailed information in terms of the feedback that they wrote, which again, some nice things that they did. What kind of impact did you see in terms of as a team? Because 70 odd people is a large amount of people in a workforce, isn't it? Even though Northumbria Police is much bigger.
Yeah, Northumbria Police about 5,000 souls in total. That particular department, 400, but split between two sections, remember. So you're looking at just under a quarter of the team, and it had a big impact on the personality. More people wanted to do it.
Yeah.
As you know, we had requests coming in saying, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? Which is great. B, it was fairly how do I put this politely without getting myself into trouble with Northumbria Police? It was a relatively militant part of the operation, in terms that you quite often get things coming across my HR business sort of side of the business, the HR business partner desks, saying this is a problem, this is an issue, that is an issue. And that really dampened down after the intervention. Okay. And actually, since you left to the present day, I can only think of one serious militant situation in that department. Can we state correlation with absolute certainty? Yeah, probably not. We'd have to do a proper scientific Durham University sponsored study. However, my impression is that the atmosphere in the team really improved. They felt that people were listening to them. They felt important, and that they felt that somebody cared other than their direct boss or the people who were working alongside. So I think, from my personal perspective, I felt it really uplifted the whole department.
No, really nice. And I was just talking to Amanda about 2 to 3 weeks just before we went into lockdown about the next stage of the development. But current capacity and current situation, it might take a little bit longer than the new Olympics to get going again. But no, it's certainly a project which I really enjoy. It's slightly different because there is a different mindset in the police force than any other organisation that I work with, whether it's a business or whether it's a sport, because you're almost in a unique situation, aren't you, being a policeman and being involved in the force?
Yeah, it's Jim Gray, the head of the Federation, talks very eloquently about this, that they, and this is one of the reasons I mentioned customers earlier, they don't view their clients as customers particularly. If they do have customers, it's the public, because they have to keep the public safe and they have to respond to the demands given to them by various governments, etc., while staying politically neutral. So it's a very strange role. There's no bottom line motive. The strategy can't be one of finance, although there is a financial envelope they have to work in. What they see and deal with on a day-to-day basis would make your toes curl. They see the worst of humanity, really. But they also get the best of humanity sometimes. They see bravery. They see people working in really trying circumstances and coming through. And they see humour. And they get the opportunity to see life in all its hues. Excuse me. So you're right to describe it. It's a very strange, if you think about it, it's a very, very strange business, and not one that easily aligns to other businesses. So when people are looking for synergies, it's very difficult to do. But they're still human beings. They still have wants, needs, desires, hopes. They still operate under Maslow. They have basic requirements that need satisfying. They have hopes and dreams, and they need to be treated with respect. But it is a strange, as you say, a strange environment to find yourself one in, and one which I've really found pleasurable. It's really opened my eyes to what a fantastic job they do.
Yeah, I think once you look past the uniform and you do get to see them as human beings, one of the things that came out in the conversations that we had with them was that they were too tired to go home. They were too tired to go home physically and mentally, and then be at a high performance level at home with family and with friends, because of all of the horrible things that they'd either seen or heard or spoke about. And it was quite draining. So we put in a little part of the program where it started to revitalize their energy, starting to rebuild that confidence in some of the other skill sets that they have outside of that 12-hour shift that they might be doing. So hopefully they took something with them, and that led to them being a little bit happier outside of their work and happier inside their work as well at the same time.
And people forget, don't they? People get into routines. And I think you reminded them sometimes that are in those routines. So there's the very fancy, as you say, tools you gave them on a mental health perspective to give them that time to readjust and to go through periods where they can almost segue from one operating field into another operating field, which might be the family. But also just some of the basic stuff about taking care of your physicality, taking care of what you eat. People forget. And then we were joking earlier about the increase in alcohol consumption during COVID-19. Yeah. Well, you have to set yourself limits. if I start having a little drink at 4 o'clock on a Monday, then you know what, the week has gone. The week has gone. So you have to basically say, well, okay, it's a normal working week. I'm not going to drink until a Friday, 5:35, 6 o'clock, whatever it is, and then I'm going to stop again on a Saturday night, because otherwise I can't operate properly during the week, and I can't relax, and I can't sleep well, and all the other basic stuff. And I think you reminded a lot of them about some of the basics of just sensible self-care. What is it that gives you enough energy to cope with what is a tremendously demanding job? And you're right, at the end of the day, no matter what day it is, whether it's a Monday or a Sunday, whether it's summer or winter, they've done a job of work.
Yeah, we get stuck. We get stuck, and without using the word plod, well, we're talking about the police force. We plod through life sometimes, and then it becomes we were talking about it earlier, it becomes a decade where I've just missed a decade. And then when I start to reflect, it's too late, it's gone. And the one thing we can't get back is time. And time is so valuable to all of us, because we don't know how much time that we have on this planet. So we have to try to utilize it as much as we possibly can and be the best versions of ourselves every possible day, because we just don't know what happens tomorrow. So that was really interesting, and in terms of what they taught me about their energy levels and their motivations, and trying to get them to rethink about, you mentioned Maslow's needs, and those basic needs that we need as a human being. And I don't know whether you saw the infographic that came out recently about being stuck in the COVID-19, about Maslow. And some of us are back there now. We can't go out of the house. We can't socially interact with people. You can't go down the pub. You can't generate any income. You can't fly abroad on a holiday. So actually, some of those basic needs are right where a lot of people are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And having Zoom conversations such as this, reaching out to your family. We're social animals at the end of the day. And even individuals like me, the Myers-Briggs thing, I confuse people a little bit, because they always think I'm an extrovert, but actually I'm just on the introvert side of the scale. So whilst I'm relatively comfortable in my own company, even I still need to reach out and have a conversation, speak to somebody new, even if it's just about the Newcastle United takeover. It doesn't have to be about work. It doesn't have to be, in fact, hopefully it's not about work, because we all need that social creatures in order to grow and develop. If we're just sitting there watching, Homes Under the Hammer or Bargain Hunt or whatever dreadful daytime TV is on, then we're all going to go slightly insane during this period, and it's not going to be good for anybody.
Absolutely. And I am top end of extrovert, although there's my child and wife just coming in there. So thanks for that. As we were just talking about, having that little space, isn't it? Interesting. And I'm top end of extrovert, but even when you're that level, you do need to find your own space. And we're not allowed out because of Jessica, and at least until June the 27th. But we have a relatively nice house, but there's no space, and you've got to manufacture that, and you've got to just say to your spouse and your kids, I just need to go and have half an hour in the garden. I need to go and run. I need to go and read a book. I need to go and sit in the toilet and read the newspaper. But you need to do something for your own mental sanity. No matter what your personality trait tells you, you have to be slightly flexible at this moment in time in order to challenge yourself on a day-to-day basis.
I think some of the lessons to be learned are, you and I had great discussions, starting 2 years ago, about the importance of people taking healthy breaks.
Yeah.
About taking that downtime. And the police are dreadful for not taking any breaks, because there'll be another call. There's always another call. There's always another emergency. There's always another thing to attend. And because of the fact that it is a uniform service and it's all for one and one for all, they tend to want to support their fellow colleagues. So when the call does come in, they will drop their sandwich and they will go out and help. When the call does come in, they will get out of the gym and get in the panda car, etc. And actually what they have to remind themselves is, no, you take the break. You look after number one first. There's other people who will take the call. There are other people available. And then once you're fully relaxed again, then you can go out and help them.
Yeah, you need to stop. You need to finish off that little job. You need to reflect a
Yeah.
little bit, you need to recharge on it, and then you need to set and empower your own physicality for what's going to be the next job. But you need that little pause, definitely.
And that argument, which I always had about the level of your efficiency, you know, if you don't take a break, it drops off and it drops off and it
Absolutely.
drops off. And if you do take a break, you can kind of keep it up there a little bit more. And I think if COVID-19 teaches us anything, it becomes stark how efficient you are when you're working. You know, I hit my desk at about 8:30. That first 2 hours till 10 o'clock, I'm absolutely on fire. But then if I do not have a break, it just goes like that.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
we
very
talk about performance habits and performance breaks. So we do that as almost an intervention and a strategy. But Colin, I'm just a bit conscious of time, because I could talk to you all day about loads of stories and theories and things like that. But if we're going to just wrap this up quickly, one is what's the next 12 months got in store for you, and what top tips would you give to an organization likes of the police or the armed forces that would help their staff just be more efficient within their workload?
Well, I think in terms of my own personal situation, as you know, I decided to leave the police at the end of last year.
Yeah.
With rather great timing, signed it off in January just before COVID-19. But so who
Well,
knows what
you a holiday.
So yes, so I'm having a nice holiday in the house. I'll stay in HR. My big thing, as you probably remember, is trying to create inclusive, customer-orientated environments. And I've developed some models with your friends from university to that end. So hopefully I'll find an opportunity where I can do some work in that area. And I think in terms of your second point about what's the big learning, I think we've just mentioned it. The big learning is if you look after yourself, then you can look after other people. It comes back to that old analogy. If the oxygen mask is coming down from the aeroplane roof, you put it on yourself first. So you take breaks, you sleep properly, you exercise, you try and get some sleep. Yes, it's a worrying time, but the more you exercise, the less you drink, the more sleep you'll get. And if you do that regularly, you'll be okay.
Fab. Lovely, Colin. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to finish with two quick things. One is, because I took some learning from our conversations as well. And we both like to keep fit and do a little bit of sports stuff. And you ran 3 half marathons last year. Was it 3 half marathons last year?
Yeah.
And they were staged at different times of the year. And what I liked about that was that, and having ran a half marathon, the Great North Run, you train for the Great North Run, you do the Great North Run, then you never run again. And then you train for the Great North Run, you run the Great North Run, and then you never run again. Now, yours were quite incremental in the year, which meant you were always continuously training. And I always think we are continuously learning. So that was my first piece of knowledge, which I took from you in the police force, was let's continue the learning constantly. Let's not stop it. But then also that little break, that little high performance break, to measure that when I take that break, my learning and performance is increased, is something I think we could all do a little bit better. And what you need for that is a little bit of a cue. You need a little bit of a reminder. And whether you ask Siri to do that or Alexa to do that, you can plan in your phone now to say, right, just take a breath, just have 5 minutes. You can do that. And those little visual cues will certainly help performance across the board, I think.
Fabulous. No, that's very true. My wife and son could learn from that. They're much better runners than me. And what my wife, particularly more than my son, actually fails to do is take those breaks. She pushes and pushes and pushes, and then the injury forces her to have a longer break than she'd like. Yeah.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, thank you very, very much, Colin. If anybody wants to subscribe or wants some more information about any kind of HR or emotional intelligence models that Colin has been working on as well, please feel free to subscribe, like the Facebook page, and then you can get as much information off us as possible. So, Colin, thank you again, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you. Bye.